Oh, hey there everybody, I'm Matt Gary, and on this episode of Coding with the Force, I'm going to show you how to make a configurable Lightning Web Component that allows you to put external links in the utility bar of your apps. Okay guys, so before we get started, let me show you what we're actually going to be building today. If you didn't know, in all Lightning apps, regardless of whether they are regular Lightning apps or console apps, like we're in right now, you can add a utility bar to the bottom. And one of the things I'm most frequently asked to do when I'm building new Salesforce instances is create a way for users to basically link out to other sites from within Salesforce. So an easy place where users can go to get all of the relevant links to sites that they use every day. And that way they don't have to bookmark those. They don't have to, keep them in a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet or something crazy like that. They can all just live in Salesforce. So what I've done is I've created this reusable, custom metadata and Lightning Web Component setup that allows me to basically just drag this into any new org and use it whenever, right? And so I'll break down how it's built, and if you guys want, you can use it in your projects as well. So basically what happens is if you click this link down here in the utility bar, this external links Lightning Web Component pops up, and it just produces these links based on what is in my custom metadata. And if you click these links, they can either open as tabs, or if you have the ability on your sites to set your own content security policy, you can actually allow it to create a tab that pops up that actually brings the site directly into Salesforce itself, so your users don't ever have to leave. This particular portion, right, opening up the tab, this is only relevant for console apps. So Sales Console, Service Console, or any custom console app that you make. But that being said, if you're using a console app and you want to open this in a brand new tab, you can, and it's pretty convenient. So let me show you how I've got this set up in the custom metadata, and then after we go through the custom metadata object, I'll show you how to set up the code and the important aspects of it. So over here in custom metadata, I've got a utility bar link custom metadata type. And if you're not familiar with what a custom metadata type is, it's kind of like an object, but it more similarly represents what you would think of as a config file in C# or something, if you're doing development in one of those languages. That's how I use them most frequently anyway, is kind of a config file for whatever code is potentially accessing it. So this utility bar link has got a number of fields on it, so I'll just walk you through them. We've got an active link field. This basically determines whether or not the link will show up on the external links Lightning Web Component or not. Then we have a link URL. This will of course be the URL for the link, so wherever you're trying to link to, you'd put it in there. There's the open in console tab. So if you have this checkbox checked on your custom metadata type records, then this will allow it to open within an actual console tab instead of in a brand new browser tab. And finally, we've got the order, which basically just determines the order in which you see the links on the Lightning Web Component here. So to create new records, you click that. Let me go back. After you've created your custom metadata object, you'll click the Manage Utility Bar Links, and within here, you'd create a new record and give it a label. It'll automatically get a name that is based off of what is referred to as the master label, and then you just fill it out, kind of how I described before, right? So you want it to open in the console tab, you check the box, put the URL there, the order, and whether or not it's an active link. All right, so custom metadata type, pretty simple, and let's move on to the wonderful, wonderful code. So the first thing that we will do is we will create an Apex class, and we will call it the, I don't know, external links controller. And what this controller is going to do is pretty simple. It's basically just going to grab our information for us and return it to us in our Lightning Web Component that we're about to build here in just a moment. So because it's going to return the data to a Lightning Web Component, we'll create an Aura-enabled method, and we'll make it public, static, and it will return a list of our utility bar link metadata. And what will we name this? We'll just name it get utility bar links. That'll work. And basically all we're going to do is return the list of utility bar links. So this can be pretty simple. We can just say return select and then master label link URL, I think is what I named it, the open in console tab, and I think that's actually it. And then we'll say from the utility bar link metadata, and we'll also want to add some criteria where the what was the name of that field? The active link, that's what it's called, where active link is equal to true, and then we'll order it by our order field. Okay. So basically, what this will do is it'll just create a list of our utility bar links and return it directly to our class, to our Lightning Web Component that we'll see here in just a moment. Okay, so we'll save that, and it's deploying some other things that I guess I made at some point in time. We'll see if those are finished. They probably aren't. If you're not familiar with the editor I'm in, I guess I should say this is IntelliJ and Illuminated Cloud 2. I do have a video for how to set this up if you're unfamiliar with it. So feel free to check that out. It makes development quite a bit easier in my opinion if you use either this IDE or Visual Studio Code if you're more familiar or comfortable using that. Alright, so let's go to make a new Lightning Web Component, and we'll just name this the external links component. And I did something I'm used to doing but shouldn't. The first letter of your Lightning Web Component, if you didn't know, should never be capitalized. It will not be happy about it if you capitalize it. So let's get ahead of that, I guess. Okay, so right now what we are going to do next is we're going to create a connected callback method, and I'll explain to you two things. Number one, what the connected callback method does, and also why I'm not using a wire method. So the connected callback method is a method that's run on the load of a Lightning Web Component. So as soon as it's kind of like the initialization handler in an Aura component, it will just run as soon as your component is loaded or refreshed. So the reason I'm using the connected callback method as opposed to the wire method is because in most of my projects there are some Aura components that exist from times before Lightning Web Components, and for some reason when you have an @Aura enabled cacheable equals true method in your controller, so over here if you used a wire statement and did cacheable equals true, for some reason I have had problems where you will see the Aura components start to fail because they do DML operations, and if you weren't aware, Aura cacheable equals true methods cannot do any DML operations. Now why this somehow bleeds into those Aura components, I'm not really sure, but I've had it happen to me a handful of times. So for these utility bar link components, I always use the connected callback to make sure that that accidental weird bug doesn't show itself and ruin a bunch of pre-existing functionality. So anyway, now that I've gone through that, let's go through how to import our class into this Lightning Web Component. So if you're not familiar with that, it's pretty simple. You're just basically gonna do an import statement, and then the import statement basically gets a variable name. So this get URL links is the variable name for this import statement, or the representation of it anyway. And then we'll say add Salesforce /Apex, and then we've got our external links controller dot get utility bar links. So basically what this will do is it'll allow us through this variable here to call this Apex method within our class. And so what we're going to do is we'll say get URL links dot then. So if you don't know what's happening right now, we're creating basically a promise. So we're saying, okay, when this method in the controller is done firing, then we're going to do this. So, we're going to do whatever we want to happen next. So we're waiting for the Apex controller to be done, and then we're going to do the following. We will declare this is kind of like shorthand for a function in JavaScript. So we're saying when the result comes back, basically we're going to fire this function, and I need to declare a variable, but I'll show you. So we'll say and I also need to no I don't so we'll declare a variable of link list up here, and we'll say, okay, so once our controller method gets done, then we're going to fire this result method effectively, and we'll say this dot link list is equal to our result. And yeah, it's really that simple. To make this even better, in my opinion anyway, you can do a catch. So what this is saying is, if the method that runs within this then statement fails, then let's catch it and throw an error. So within here we're going to do error, and then it fires this function. So I'm just going to put this down here real quick so I don't forget. Console.error, and we'll say this is the error. Now ideally you'd have an error logging system that you sent this to, and that way you could figure out what the error is much quicker than dumping it into a console. But anyway, that is not what we're covering today. So let's keep on keeping on. So at this point, we've got our method set up, basically. So we're saying, this is pretty simple so far. When the page loads and our method in the controller successfully runs, then let's assign the list that we get from the controller to our list in our JavaScript controller here. And now we need to do something with the JavaScript controller in our our JavaScript variable within our Lightning Web Component template. So let's just build the very simplified version of this. So say for instance you don't ever want this in a console, then you don't need the complication of opening it in a console tab. And I'll show you the super easy way to get this done. So what I like to do is say template if true linked list, and what this is going to do is say if the linked list is basically not equal to nothing or undefined or anything else that's completely useless to us, then continue to render this next part of the template. So obviously if we didn't have a linked list, we'd have literally nothing to create here. But if we do, then we want to basically do a for each. We basically want to create a loop that displays our links for us. So we'll say for each linked list item, and the name of the item is equal to, I don't know, we'll call it link. And within here, it's gonna be pretty simple for this first one anyway. Basically what we're going to do is just create a link, and it's got some special stylings in it that I'll add real quick that make it styled the way that I like it, but you can certainly style these however you want to do it. I've got a slids button styling, or SLDS. I frequently refer to it as slids. Button care, right. Is that what I did? No. Button neutral. There we go. And then a custom styling called link button. Okay, and basically what we're going to do in here, the part that you actually care about that's interesting and not just my random custom stylings, is we add in the link to the href. So we'll say link dot site underscore URL underscore C, I think is what I called it. Actually, no, that's not right at all. That is an old variety, I think. Yeah, it is link URL now. So link URL underscore C, and then basically the only other thing we're going to do is bring in the master label for the simplified version. So we'll also give this a target of blank so that it opens in a new tab and nobody's upset that they just overrode their Salesforce one. That wouldn't be great. And then we'll just say the link dot master label. Okay, so let me just explain what I did really quick. It's pretty simple, but it's confusing if you've never seen it. So basically what we're saying is we're going to loop through this link list, this list variable that we've described here and given a value here. And for each item in the list, we're going to describe it as a link. And so while we iterate over this, we're going to create a new clickable link that goes to the link URL, and it has the link master label in it. Okay, so there's one more thing, actually two more things we need to do. First, let's go over how we set up the metadata so that you can actually put this in a utility bar. If you went right now to your app and you tried to put this into a utility bar, it'll just tell you, no way, man, you can't. Actually, it just won't show up in general because this hasn't been set up to be accessible to utility bars. So let me show you how to do that. Basically, if you didn't know, you've got to set up what are called targets, and the targets are basically where you can put your app, or sorry, your Lightning Web Component within Salesforce. So our target is going to be the lightning __ utility. No, it's capital. Utility bar. Okay. So basically what this is saying here is that we're allowing this app to be accessible in the utility bar. Another thing that's important, if you don't have this auto-generated by IntelliJ for you, is this is exposed metadata here. This doesn't always get generated for you depending on your IDE, and you might have to put this in yourself. So, important thing, if that's not there and the targets are not there, then you can't put that into your utility bar. So, the last thing I'll do is I'll just copy and paste this link styling that I personally like. It's not super important that we go over CSS, but I've created some custom stylings for this, and I'm just going to drop it in here so it shows up the way that we want it to. Oh man, oh, that was wild. Okay, so let's give this a shot now. So we've got this all set up, hopefully. Let me actually make sure that everything's saved. And oh yes, right, that's important. A thing that I frequently leave out because I'm still forgetting it. Inside of iterations, specifically in Lightning Web Components, you have to give your elements a key. So the elements that you're creating within here, they all need a key. So to give it a key, and it has to be unique, I basically just give it the ID. And yeah, then you should be good. So this didn't save before because I forgot to give it a key element. And if you are iterating through a list in a for each, it will not like that at all. It'll give you one of those wonderful error messages, missing key for element. Okay, so once this saves, you know, a day or two from now, maybe, there we go. Then I'll show you how to put this within a Lightning app. Okay, so now we're all good to go, hopefully. We'll type in app in the quick find and go to the app manager. And within the app manager, you can pretty much pick whatever you want. I'm going to pick the sales console because it is not in the sales console. And within the app settings page, you can see this utility items bar. And here you can click add utility item, and we can look for our, I believe I called it external links. I think, maybe. Yep, external links component. And you can see it popped up, which is great. And we can rename this whatever we want. So I'll just say, yeah, external links, and you can give it an icon. And I always just give it the link icon because why not? And you can set the panel width and height here. Unfortunately, they can only be static values, pixel values to my knowledge. They can't be percentages, unfortunately. But I'm going to set the height to 240. Okay, so now if we go to our Sales Console app, hopefully we should see it in the bottom left corner, much like we did before. And yep, we do, and good. It worked. And I didn't mess it up. That's great. Well, maybe I did. But basically, oh, actually, I have a feeling I know why I messed it up. Let me just double check it, but I'm pretty positive I do know why. Yeah, okay. So it's important to note, I work in my, oh wow, I should have hit control. I should have tabbed over. Anyway, it's important to note that I work in a org with the namespace. So I've got to do this to reference my objects and my basically anything. So objects, fields on objects, whatever else. And I didn't do that because I frequently forget in this org, because most orgs I work in do not have a namespace. If you do have a namespace in your org, everything has to be prefixed with the namespace __, much like when you have to deal with a managed package, which is always fun, right? Managed packages are always a good time. Okay, so we'll save those two things, and hopefully, let me make sure I did things right. I think I did. It's looking good. Hopefully, we'll get stuff actually working here. And if not, I'm just going to cut this video and come back because we're too deep at this point. Way too deep. Oh, there we go. Okay, good. It was just still loading. Wonderful. Okay, so that was my problem. Pretty simple problem. But it is important to know if you ever do work in a namespace org, you have to put your namespace in front of it. Most of you probably will not ever work in a namespace org. Okay, so that's the very simplified version of the external links component. So if you don't need that open in a service console or sales console or custom console app part, super simple. Very easy, and honestly you can just stop here. But if you're interested in the moderately more complex portion of this, which is actually opening it in a service console tab, let's keep going. All right, so this is going to get a little bit more confusing, and there's a couple of important changes that we're going to make. So the first thing is that this can no longer be a link element. It has to be an input element now. And so we're going to change a handful of things. So there's a couple things I'm going to do here. If you didn't know, you can basically add whatever descriptor you want through the data tag. So data dash whatever, at least that's what I like to use. And I'll show you why we need all these things here in just a moment. But let me finish updating this wonderful output link so that you can see, so it's a little more obvious why I'm doing it here in a minute. So we'll make the value of our button the master label, or our input button. We will make the actually, this can just be the data-URL, and we'll make this data-open tab, and we'll make this equal to link.g auto __ open in console tab __ c, and we've gotten way too big here, so let me do this and kind of drop these down. Okay, let me see if I missed anything. Make sure I didn't miss anything silly here. Oh, right. One of the most important parts, we need to describe this input as a type of button, and that needs to be in quotes. And the last thing I need is a onClick method to call a method in our controller to basically, we'll just call it the open link method. Okay, so let me just explain real quick what I've done, why I've done it, and then we'll see the complications for this. So basically, I've changed this input, or sorry, this link, that a tag link, to an input, and I've given it a bunch of data tags. So I'll pass the ID of the link and the URL for the link and whether or not we should open in a subtab. And the reason I do all these things will become obvious here in just a moment when we start building this new method called openLink in our JavaScript controller. So the reason that we do this is because now we, if we're trying to determine whether or not we should open it in a subtab or whether we open it in a new browser tab, we have to, we can't just click it and have it become a link that goes, if it was an A tag, it would just always open up in a new browser tab as opposed to a console tab. So now we've got to make that determination on our own, and we have to do that within the JavaScript controller here. And so basically what we're going to do within this JavaScript controller is say, okay, we've got this method of openLink, and we're going to pass it the event of us clicking the button, and based on what is within that event, we're going to either open a subtab or we're going to open up a browser console tab, or sorry, a browser tab. Let me make that a little less confusing. So basically what we're going to do here is check a value. So we're going to say if the event.target, so .target is basically the element that you've clicked on the screen, and then we're going to get an attribute of that target. And in our case, the attribute that we care about is the data-open tab element, and we want to know if it equals true. And unfortunately, because of the way this event works, I can't just say if this is equal, like get rid of this. It passes it as a string value, so I've got to check whether it's actually equal to a string value, unfortunately. But if you don't understand what this is saying here, let me just explain it real quick. You're saying if the button I clicks, where is it? I keep data open tab value is equal to true. So if that button I clicks data open value is equal to true, let's go on ahead and basically we're gonna create and dispatch an event, and we have to create and dispatch this event because, believe it or not, LWC Lightning Web Components are not capable of opening this in a new tab. Only Aura components are. So we're going to write in a very, very small Aura component here in a minute to take our event, actually basically house our Lightning Web Component, take our event, and just open it in a subtab. So I'll show you it's how you create that event and pass it to your Aura component so that it can see what your Lightning Web Component is wanting to do. So we'll say let our URL passed, or our URL, actually this is probably better naming. Let our URL to pass equals the event.target.get attribute, and then I don't remember what we named our attribute. I think it is data-URL. Pretty sure, but let's double check it. Data-URL, that is indeed what we called it. So if you're not familiar with JavaScript variables, another thing I feel like not a lot of people are familiar with, let is basically a variable that is local to within the scope of this block or whatever block that it's within, and the subblocks potentially, so the nested blocks within it. It's much like a method variable in Apex, so nothing super crazy going on. And then we'll declare a constant open tab event, and we'll make that equal to what is a new custom event, And I'm going to name this event the open new subtab event, and we will pass it the what did I do here? What did I do? Oh, I forgot my. Oh, I closed it. Okay. And we'll pass it the detail. Whoa. The detail of our URL to pass. Cool. So let me explain this. Again, if you're not familiar with JavaScript variables, constant is basically the same as a final variable in Apex or any other language that uses final variables. That's what a constant is. Basically, once you declare it, you can't alter it. And all right, one more line of code here. This dot dispatch event, and then we're dispatching our open tab event. Okay, so basically what we've done is we have determined whether or not we should open a console tab. And if we should open a console tab, we are going to grab the URL, and we are going to create a new custom event. So this is, you know, if you're familiar with the old Aura data model, this is like, you know, registering an Aura event. And we're calling that new event open new subtab. And we're passing it our URL, basically. And then after we've kind of set it up, we're dispatching the event. So we're saying, okay, let's dispatch this event so whatever is actually handling or looking for this event to happen can find it and handle it with whatever code it handles it with. All right, cool. So we've set up what we're going to do, at least in the Lightning web component, for this opening tab, opening a console tab. But what if we want to open the link in a regular browser window tab? So again, instead of a console tab like one of these guys, we want to open it in a browser tab. So that's what I mean by console as opposed to browser. We're going to say again, actually I could probably just put this up here and it'd be a little bit better, so I don't have to declare it twice. We're going to say, oh, right. We're going to do a NavigationMixin. So I've got to actually import this. This NavigationMixin thing that I'm about to show you in Lightning Web Components is effectively the exact same thing as a page reference in Aura Components or Visualforce. So don't get too confused by it. It's an interesting new naming convention they have for it, but it is effectively the same idea. So we're going to import what's called the NavigationMixin, and we're importing it from Lightning Navigation. And the more important and interesting thing you have to do is you actually have to extend your NavigationMixin here and then combine the Lightning element with it. So whenever you use this NavigationMixin, you actually have to have your JavaScript controller rather extend it and then mix in the Lightning element. Anyway, interesting thing. But I'll show you how to use it down here. It's actually pretty easy to use and super useful for a lot of different things. Basically, we're just going to say this. So this is relevant. Basically, it's saying this, you know, class that we're in, basically, more or less. NavigationMixin.navigate. And you know, what do we do? We're basically going to say that we want to navigate to a type of standard web page __ web page, and we also want to pass it some attributes. So we're going to pass it the attributes that it needs, which is just the URL. So we're going to say the URL is the URL to pass. Okay. So what's happening? We're essentially saying if we're not supposed to open this in a subtab, we're going to let the NavigationMixin, or the page reference class, more or less, to make that less confusing to people who aren't used to LWC yet, we're creating a page reference that's going to open up a new browser or console tab. And it is really just that easy. There's really nothing more to it for Lightning Web Components. If you Google this NavigationMixin, it's got a lot of really useful methods for a lot of different things. So yeah, it's worth the effort to figure it out. It's very simple by comparison to page references, in my opinion. But okay, let me just refresh this, and we'll see for everything but coding with the force down here, it should still open in a tab. So let me just hard refresh this one more time to make sure that the code is really doing what I want it to do. And you can see it indeed is. And if we clicked coding with the force, nothing's happening yet, which is good because nothing should be happening other than an event firing and not being handled by anything. So let's get back to the code and figure out how we handle this event. Okay, so like I said, unfortunately, we've got to create a very small Aura component to allow us to open a console tab here. So we'll create, well, not a Lightning application. We'll create a Lightning component, and we'll just name it the external links wrapper. Cool. And we've got to, basically what we're going to do is we're going to wrap our external links Lightning Web component, or we're going to use this to wrap our external Lightning or links component so that we can open things in a subtab. So effectively now we're actually going to have to put this Aura component in the utility bar instead of the Lightning Web component. So to make sure that we actually have the ability to put this into a utility bar, we're going to have to implement the force, I believe it's the app hostable, and we also have to do the flexi page available for all page types. And last but not least, we need the Lightning is URL addressable. And we need that because we're opening up the console tab with a link. And then this also needs an access of global. So if we don't have the access of global, it won't be able to be found in the utility bar area when we try to go add it. And if we don't have these implementations, then we won't be able to link out, and we also won't be able to put it in the utility bar. So these implementations and the access for this Aura component is pretty important. The next thing we'll want to import is the Lightning, I think it's Workspace API. Yep, that's it. And we want to make sure to give this an Aura ID of something so that we can access it pretty easy. I'll just call it the Workspace. So basically, this Lightning Workspace API, it kind of represents the console workspace you're in. So if, whatever console app you've built, it represents that. And that way you can kind of access the random methods that are within your workspace. And then we will import our external links component. And this is the important part right here, how you handle the custom event that we built before. So if you remember, in here whenever we opened a tab, we created a custom event called open new subtab. Now, inside of our our Aura component, we can say on. So all of these custom events have to have the word on before them, and then you do open new subtab, and at that point you will then call a method. So you'll say c.open console tab or something, and we'll close that off. So that's this is how this is an important thing in general if you're working with LWC and an existing or not a brand new one that has a lot of Aura components. This is how you would pass from a Lightning web component that's nested within an Aura component an event that you need it to handle. So we've created our event and we're dispatching it within the Lightning web component, and then this is how our Aura component is able to handle the event from the LWC. Okay, so that's all great stuff, but we now need to figure out what to do when we handle that event. So I don't remember what I called my method. I called it open console tab. So we need to create a Aura method, Aura controller method for that open console tab. So the way you do that is a bit different than normal JavaScript. You do, the name of the method, colon, function, component, event, helper. So the component variable represents the Aura component in its entirety. The event is the event that could theoretically get passed to it, and then the helper would be the helper classes that you can make for your Aura components. And then we will grab our workspace. So we'll say let the workspace equal component dot find, and I think we actually called it workspace. I will double check it, but pretty positive we did indeed call this thing our workspace, so that's good. So we've got our workspace, which is wonderful, and this is literally all we're going to do. No joke. Very, very simple. We'll say workspace dot open tab, and we're basically just going to give it some parameters for the tab. So we give it the URL, and the URL is event dot param get param. Come on, Matt, you've got this. You can maybe do it. I don't know. I lost the ability at the moment, and I don't remember what we named this parameter. We named it URL to pass. So this is the parameter that we passed in. It cares about this thing, whatever you named this, or whatever you're passing in, it cares about that. So we'll say event.getParam URL to pass, and I do not need a semicolon there. And then we'll say focus is true. Oh, and I need a semicolon there. Okay, actually, you don't have to, but in JavaScript, it's pretty lenient depending on the browser whether or not you need semicolons or not, but I always do it. Anyway, off topic. So basically, this is it. That's all you need to do here in this component. Very simple, like I mentioned before. But effectively, what this is doing is it's saying, if we get this event from, if we get this on new subtab event, let's call the open console tab method in our controller here, and then we're going to grab the workspace that we are currently in, and we're going to open a tab within our workspace using this URL, and we're going to focus on the tab after it's open. So say you've already got a bunch of tabs open in your console, this will force it to automatically focus on this tab that it's about to pop. And hopefully I didn't miss anything. We'll see. I've practiced this just a handful of times. Okay, so if we refresh this, you will notice that if I push this, still nothing is going to happen. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. But also good because we actually need to go to our Sales Console app and change what we've got there in the utility bar. So like I said before, because you have to wrap this Lightning Web Component, you need to wrap this Lightning Web Component in an Aura component. We now have to grab the Aura component, which I forget the name of now. I have called it External Links Wrapper. Okay, so External Links Wrapper should hopefully be here. And we no longer need this guy, so we're going to remove him. And we'll just call this External Links. Give it the link icon. Give it a height of 240, and save it. And then if we come back here to our Sales Console app and reload it, hopefully everything should be the same, and it is, but our Coding with the Force will open a new wonderful subtab and eventually load. But as you can see, it's still waiting and thinking about whether it wants to load, because I just run a little forum with not a lot of server power. Okay, so as you can see, it loaded, which is great and wonderful. So things are working out. And it looks like our code is running and we're good. And we'll just double check that these still open in new browser tabs, and they do. And yeah. So that is mostly it. Hopefully, you know, this was helpful to somebody out there trying to do some of this stuff. Like I said before at the very beginning of this video, it is important that you do have to have access to set the content security policy for your sites to allow, you know, basically a whitelisted site like Salesforce to iframe in the content to be able to open it in this subtab. But if you do have access to those sites and can set it, you can embed them within the page, which is pretty cool. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, you know, make sure to subscribe. I will hopefully be making it bare minimum one of these videos a week. And you know, if you want more information about this, be sure to check out the blog post. And there's also code for this in my GitHub, so you can just drag it and drop it right into your org, and you don't have to develop it unless you would like to and expand upon it. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.